Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone. Welcome.
Hello, Paula.
Hi. Welcome. Everything was running a little early today, which is a bizarre thing to happen, and then I got like discombobulated by that. But so now we're on time. And this is our first Credo presentation of the year. Oh, and the best, apparently.
So far.
I want to let you guys know that we will be experimenting a little bit with the Credo this year. So we'll be doing some that are, same kind of presentation. And then if anyone attended it, I know Mary, you did, I did sort of a, let's share with each other our personal stories around a specific issue. And that was a way to like engage everybody as opposed to just having a presentation. So we'll do some of that as well. But for now, we have the best one ever, apparently. And so after wandering down after wandering down a variety of religious paths, Bob Gorman found his spiritual home here at UUCC in 2005, so 20 years. And over that 20 years, he's developed and hosted a variety of film series. Most recently, you may know it was a 4-session course on our UU values as depicted in the Twilight Zone. Bob has also served on the Adult Religious Education and Spiritual Development team, was a member of the Visions steering team, participated in the Racial Justice Core Group, and currently serves as co-chair of the board of trustees. So we're 9 more months. And so let us welcome Bob Gorman.
Well, thank you all for coming today. I appreciate it. Probably like most of you, I was not raised in a religious household. I was baptized Lutheran, but I don't ever recall going to a Lutheran service. Periodically, my parents would take my 2 sisters to some sort of Protestant church. And we would go for a couple of times, and then that would be it for the next couple of years. I think it was because my dad never liked to become part of it. But as I grew older, though, I began to feel the need to explore more deeply my spiritual side. I tried a variety of Protestant faiths, including, of all things, Christian Science, which is a topic for another day. But I found nothing that seemed to fit. In the early 1970s, I even gave Catholicism a shot. But I drifted away from that as well. I simply failed to find the answers to any of my questions in the traditional Western religions, and gave up trying to force myself to believe in something I did not find spiritually fulfilling. There's an old Buddhist adage to the effect that when the pupil is ready, the teacher appears. In the early 1980s, I stumbled across a book. 1980s. I stumbled across a book called Buddhism, Way of Life and Thought by Nancy Wilson Ross. I was undergoing drastic personal changes in my life at the time, and was ready to see things in a new way. I found the Buddhist teachings on the cause of suffering and the prescription for overcoming it to be compelling. What really resonated with me was the Buddhist belief that all life is interconnected, that in fact all existence is one. The contemporary Buddhist monk and Zen master, the Venerable Pangyun Sunim, defined the concept thusly. In general, there are 2 different views of how we perceive the world. The first view is that all beings exist independently, that the world is a collection of independent beings. From this perspective, life and death of one being is unrelated to the life and death of another. The second worldview is that all beings, rather than existing independently, exist in relation to each other. Buddhism views that everything in the world is interconnected. When Buddha gained enlightenment, it was the realization that interconnectedness is the true nature of all beings. We are not only connected to other people, but to the air through our breathing and to the universe through light. Thus, severing these interconnection means death for all beings. While I didn't belong to any religious group during the intervening 2 decades, I continued to explore my more deeply Buddhist philosophy. I read extensively I even attended a Zen Buddhist meditation retreat, was a great interesting experience. Now, although I don't consider myself Buddhist, the basic precepts really appeal to me. After the 2004 election, I was feeling really angry and disconnected from the people around me, which seems kind of quaint nowadays. People thought the Bush re-election would be the golden age. And I needed a community that comforted my soul while appealing to both my head and my heart. That's when Jane and I first began exploring Unitarian Universalism. I knew very little about it at the time, other than its reputation as a liberal religion and its acceptance of a variety of religious traditions. That's when I first found out about our 7 principles. Reading those was like being handed a cool drink of water after wandering in the desert. What especially speaks to my soul is our value of interdependence, which was once the 7th principles, concerning the interconnectedness of all life. Now, some of you are likely to disagree with me, but I believe interdependence, not love, to be the foundation upon which all our other values are built. If you firmly embrace a deep respect for the independent web of existence, which I might add is a profoundly transformative act for how most of us think, then it naturally follows that love and generosity are universal, that they extend not just to us humans, but to all that exist. And if you accept that all life is one, then of course you have to believe in the goal of world community, which acknowledges and values differences among us, and that everything, human and non-human alike, has inherent worthiness and dignity and the right to flourish. Well, I did not come to this core belief overnight. The seeds were definitely planted in my childhood, which probably is the case for all of us, taking root and flourishing as I matured. As with everything we come to accept as true, there are many sources that influence and inspire us each as we go along the way. My parents, certainly, my 2 sisters, my friends, my teachers, the community in which I live, all had an impact on me. And in my case, film and television had a powerful impact on my growing consciousness. Motion picture arts often speak to me in ways that other forms do not. They tend to hit me at a visceral level and have a resonance that I cannot easily explain. I can even tell you in what theaters I saw certain films, some of them more than 70 years ago. I can tell you the first film I remember seeing. It was a 3D film, first 3D film ever made, Moana Devil. And I actually found a copy of it with the 3D glasses, and I can watch it. But what I found cool was out the spears, and it was an African adventure film, and the spears and the lions came out at you at the screen, and wore those little red and blue glasses and looked ahead. Yeah. I watched it again recently, and those lions look pretty mangy. So here are just 3 examples of the numerous movies and television programs from my childhood that helped me come to the belief that all life is interdependent. First one I'll mention is a French film called Night and Fog from 1956. Anybody seen that? A couple of you have? Okay. I was only about 7 years old when I first encountered this short French documentary on the Holocaust. By the way, it's still an excellent film. It's not real long if you get a chance to see it. You'll see the impact it has. The introduction to it at such a young age was purely accidental. Now, in my house, we had a small house, and my bedroom happened to be located near where the family TV was, which is about this big. And my parents put me to bed, I don't know what, 8 o'clock, whatever, a young kid, but I was restless, and I could hear there was something going on in the living room. My parents were watching something. And when I walked out, the way it was arranged, the TV was here, and they were facing it, and I was behind them. So they weren't aware that I was there. Now, you have mentioned that, okay. What I saw was images from this film, Night and Fog. I saw stacks of human bodies being bulldozed into mass graves, and the haunted expressions of walking skeletons. as they stared blankly into the faces of their liberators. There were piles of clothing, glasses, suitcases, and shoes reaching sky high. Anyone been to the Holocaust Museum in Washington, D.C.? Yeah, they have it like that. It's very impactful. There were shots of large brick buildings and the open ovens found inside them. I'm not sure how long I silently stood there before my parents realized I was standing there behind them and put me back to bed, but it could have been more than a few minutes, but I stood there. Of course, I had no idea at the time exactly what I was viewing, but I knew it was something awful. Those images were seared into my brain, and they have never left me. It was my first introduction to human evil. It also left me with a thirst to understand how such an event could have come about. I read numerous books on Holocaust over the years, and even wrote my history master's thesis on racial anti-Semitism in 1930s England to try to understand this. What I've concluded is that this is what happens when a society separates itself from the interdependent web. When human beings see themselves as independent of the web of life, we are capable of the most despicable acts of cruelty. I believe that there's a little Hitler in all of us, and we bring him to life whenever we view the world as something outside and beneath us. Second example, I'll spare you my discussion, Creature from Black Lagoon, is from The Twilight Zone. Those who know me know that's no surprise. The episode, now, you all remember The Twilight Zone, right? Okay. It was my favorite television series as a child growing up in Miami. It was a brainchild of Rod Serling, who wrote about 2/3 of the scripts. And it was his vehicle for imparting messages about truth, compassion, peace, and social justice every week, all in the guise of science fiction with a twist ending. Most of us as young kids were hooked by the twist ending. You know, and we did, and Rod Serling did that intentionally. He knew he could get away with addressing those issues if he called it science fiction. People would let their guards down. The censors wouldn't say, stop showing that. You know, for 5 years, he got away with it. Someone once remarked to me that much of what she believes as an adult came as a result of watching The Twilight Zone. And I would agree with that. I think that's true in my case. Many of the 156 episodes still resonate with me today, none more so than The Monsters Are Due on Maple Street. Anyone remember that?
Monsters
Are Due on Maple Street. As stories open, it's like a nice late summer evening in this, tree-lined community, and everybody's outside. Some are washing cars, some are mowing lawns. The women, as they did in the 50s and 60s, were gathered together to gab. Probably talk about recipes. When all of a sudden, what appears to be a meteorite goes streaking across, okay, with a screaming noise. First, I'm going to go, oh, look, a meteorite. But then the lights all of a sudden go out. And not only the lights, but the cars won't start. Telephones don't work. And the lawnmower that somebody's using just dies. And there's no way they can get it started. So they started talking about this, about, what's going on. And one of the neighbors comes outside, a new neighbor, and suddenly his car starts up. And his lights come on. Okay, the other neighbor's like, what is it with this guy? Well, at this point, a little boy named Timmy says, oh, I know what it is. I've been reading all these science fiction stories. It always begins with aliens when they want to conquer Earth, send down some agents that look like humans as an advanced party. And that's what's going on. Of course, the parents are like, yeah, no, come on, that's a little louder. But when this guy's car starts up, and there's Dome. His lights come on, and there's Dome. All of a sudden, it's like, what's going on here? Well, he gets, of course, like, oh, no, wait a minute. That's not me. And one of the neighbors said, well, I see you out every night looking up at the sky. He said, well, I'm just looking at the stars. He said, besides which, the guy across the street is always in his basement at night talking on the CB radio. Well, of course, turn to this guy. And then something else happens, and so they start turning on each other like that. Suddenly, one of the neighbors said, well, let me go to the next block and see what's going on there. And he leaves. Okay. But in the meantime, the paranoia is building, and different things are happening throughout the neighborhood. Several weird events, okay? As I mentioned, that light's going on in the house of new residents. Strange behavior seems to be going on in the neighborhood. With growing darkness, the paranoia becomes even more pronounced. The tipping point occurs when the neighbor who had gone to the next neighborhood comes walking back, and it's dark at this point, and all you see is his body coming toward him. Well, by this point, one of them has a gun, and he shoots the neighbor. Okay. Well, they realize that it's the neighbor, and of course, now they're blaming this guy for causing this. Okay. Well, in the meantime, lights all of a sudden are going off and on. Cars are starting up and shutting down all over the neighborhood, and there's absolute panic. So the neighbors start picking up rocks. One has a baseball bat, and they start turning on each other. Okay. And eventually there's a full-scale riot. And as the camera pulls back, what you see is there's some aliens in a flying saucer up on the hill. And they're talking about what's going on. And the leader of them says, it's really easy to conquer Earth. All you have to do is bother their conveniences, disrupt their lives, and they'll begin turning on each other. It'll be easy to take over at that point. Okay. Rod Serling in all his episodes always had a coda at the end of the episode. And this particular one I thought was particularly powerful. What he says is the tools of conquest do not necessarily come with bombs and explosions and fallout. They are the weapons that are simply thoughts, attitudes, and prejudices, be found only in the minds of men. For the record, prejudices can kill, and suspicion can destroy, and a thoughtless, frightened search for a scapegoat has a fallout all of its own, for the children and the children yet unborn. And the pity of it is that these things cannot be confined to the Twilight Zone. Third example, you all remember the TV series The Fugitive? Okay, which was on for 4 seasons. For those of you who don't, David Jansen played Dr. Richard Kimball, a doctor in the community who was accused of murdering his wife. Of course, he was innocent. And on the way to prison, but he's convicted on the way to prison, there's a train wreck and he escaped. He had seen a one-armed man running from the scene of the crime. So for 4 years, he's trying to find that one-armed man, pursued by Lieutenant Gerard, who was like Ahab in the White Whale, who's absolutely obsessed in getting Dr. Kimball, for bringing him to justice. Now, Kimball must have been more recognizable than Santa Claus and Ronald McDonald combined. Every episode, somebody recognized it. It always escaped just in the nick of time. He'd hop a train, he'd hitch a ride, something like that, to get out of town. Well, in this episode, when the wind blows, Kimball, going by the name of Jim McGuire, is working as a handyman in a small motel run by a single mom with a young son named Kenny. The youngster is unusually bright and sensitive, but adults see him as strange because he doesn't act like normal boys should. Okay. As a result, he is withdrawn into his own world. Our hero, of course, befriends the youngster and soon begins to advise him on how to interact with others. Every episode had Dr. Kimball helping somebody. Okay. Well, the mother of this young boy has a male suitor, Steve Jackson, who wants to take Kenny fishing, but the boy doesn't want to go. So Kimball suggests that he try it anyway. If he doesn't like it, to simply smile and tell the man that he doesn't want to fish anymore. When Kimball next sees Kenny, he asks him how the fishing went. Okay, this is what Kenny says. Mr. Jackson took me out to the river, and we were just sitting there fishing, and something started pulling on my pole. Then Mr. Jackson started yelling. He grabbed the pole and pulled the fish out of the water. The hook was sticking right out of the fish's mouth. Mr. Jackson just yanked it out. He wasn't careful. He just yanked it out. Then I felt the fish scream. But Mr. Jackson just threw it in the dirt, and it started drowning in the air. It started breathing great big breaths, and then all of a sudden I felt like I was in the water. And every time I tried to breathe, the water ran into me. And I knew that I'd die if that fish died. Then Mr. Jackson said, put it in a basket. I tried to look at him, but I couldn't. Then I threw the fish back in the water. It just laid there for a minute. Then it started breathing in the water. Pretty soon it was all right again, and it went away. It was a beautiful fish, Mr. McGuire. I wish I could say that I was as aware of that, as aware as that young man was at his age, or even now for that matter. He was completely in sync with the world around him. He knew intuitively that all life is interconnected, that what happens to one of us happens to all of us. It took me many years to fully understand what that fictional character was saying. Even as an adult, I still sometimes fail to feel the fish scream. And it's difficult, I know, in these current times to see the connectedness with those around us. I have to deal with it every day because what I feel is rage. But I have to remember that Donald Trump has inherent worth and dignity. He does. Yeah, he does. Yeah. Robert Kennedy has that too. It's very hard. Living a life fully connected with the universe around me is an ongoing process, still under construction. One lesson I learned at that Zen meditation retreat long ago is how fleeting it often is to be at one with all existence. It's a state that the Zen master labeled, I'm here now, wasn't I? It's a difficult path, but one to which I'm passionately committed. As the Venerable Hunyun asserts, to do otherwise means the death for all living beings. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay.
I relate a lot to the Fugitive and
Yeah.
Twilight Zone, and also Star Trek had a great effect on me growing
Yeah.
up. What was the other show you mentioned that you didn't go with? Oh, the Creature from the Black.
I love the Creature from the Black. We're going to be showing in Charlotte at Theater Charlotte at the end of the month.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
October. And we got tickets for it. I've seen it about 1 million times. You don't know that movie? It's basically a remake of King Kong. They're in the Amazon. There's a research team in the Amazon, and they uncovered this claw sticking out of the dirt, and it belongs to what they call a gill man. Okay, who lives in the Black Lagoon. Of course, the research team has been funded by this wealthy guy who gets in his mind he wants to capture the gill man because he can make money off it. Okay, and so they go into the Black Lagoon. There's the main scientist and a young woman who's his girlfriend. Okay, goes along as research assistant. And so, of course, she serves the purpose that every woman in the 1950s science fiction, that is to scream a lot, have the monster come for her. Okay? And the monster, like in King Kong, Gilman, becomes infatuated with her and takes her away. Okay, so then they really pursue him. But the ending of the film is very much like King Kong. They open fire on him. Okay, they start shooting him to rescue the damsel in distress, and you see him go back into the water. You don't know what happens to him, but you kind of assume he's dead. But what strikes me about that film is that it deals with how we approach all of nature. I mean, the Gill Man was fine where he was. I mean, he wasn't causing anybody any harm, and they invade his territory, and he got in the way, and they killed him. I think he died because there are 2 sequels to it. So either he survived or he had brothers that survived. Yeah, by the way, that was originally shot in 3D, and I haven't seen it in 3D. Oh, boy, it's pretty cool. Yeah.
This is not, you didn't mention this at all, but I'm just wondering, does any of this connect to your love of baseball? Or how does that get into it? In other words, philosophy, is it
Yeah,
just?
well, baseball is life. I don't want to bore you. I first fell in love with the game when I was 7 years old. Growing up in Miami, there wasn't a major league team. They had a minor league team called the Marlins. It was their first game of the inaugural season. It was a big deal. Okay, they had bands there. They had a young one. I can still remember it. 7. A woman that walked on a tightrope between the stanchions, okay? And then the game started, and the second inning, the lights kind of dimmed. And this helicopter came out of the sky and landed right in the middle of the infield. See all this dust and debris going. Out stepped this tall, lanky black man with Satchel Paige.
Wow.
Now, I didn't know who Satchel Paige was. My dad did. He explained it to him. And he sat in the bullpen near us. So the rest of that game, I was focused on him. They had like a rocking chair for him, because he was in his early 50s. So they kept playing on the old man. He's actually quite good. He stayed with the Marlins 3 years and was one of the best pitchers in their nation. He was hoping he was going to lead back to chances of making it, but he did not. And ever since then, he's been infatuated with the game. There's something about it, the way it's all interconnected. And something is happening all the time. People say, oh, it's so boring. That's because you're not aware of it. Yeah. Don't look at the pitcher in the batter. Look at the infield outfield between each pitch. See what they do. They're moving around. To me, it's the most difficult sport to play. And then you got a round bat and a round ball and try to hit it. Michael Jordan found that out. It's true. It's very difficult to play. There's a beauty to it, a rhythm to it. Plus, it connects with the past. I sit down in a game and I remember when I was a kid. There's a connection there with, especially for boys, men my age, basically a boys' game. So that's what I find the beauty of it. It just kind of go back to my childhood. And it's amazing to see what happens. Every game is different.
Did you tell us the steps for finding inherent worth and dignity in Donald Trump?
I wish I could. That insight, I have to remind myself all the time.
I don't know how to find the steps. I could remind myself.
All I do
It's
is I
impossible.
know people around me where I live that are Trump supporters. I try to avoid talking politics. I try to see the humanity in them, divorce of the political things. Because they're not all horrible people.
No, but he is.
He is, yes. Well, he's deranged. He's a narcissist. What's going on with him. And I also think he has dementia setting in.
So-
My neighbors aren't.
So, yeah, but your neighbors are, that's good.
Yeah.
Well, I would say that one of the things that I view is everything comes from somewhere. If everything's connected, then everything comes from somewhere. And so who he is now comes from somewhere. So I
It's
often
not
think,
worth and dignity.
I often think he's super insecure.
Yeah.
He's very sad and lonely.
Yeah.
And those are the ways that I recognize his humanity. The ways that he demonstrates those things or how they manifest in his life are hard to watch, but it doesn't take away the fact that he's a sad, lonely, insecure,
Yeah.
old.
Worthless, undignified.
Who never laughs. You ever see him laugh? Anybody who can't laugh has got a mental illness. It's true.
I don't want to bridge off and what helps me, I'm 26, so I don't. But what helps me is that you can, exactly what she said, and empathize with the human aspects of what's happened. It does not mean you need to give credence to the actions or behaviors.
No.
It's in the same way of anybody. They can be the person you love, your parents, your brothers, sisters, friends. They can do things that upset you greatly that you didn't think they had it in them. But you can just redirect it and it doesn't change their worth. You don't have to agree with everything or what they're doing. But you hold it in your heart if you don't give it out.
Yeah.
Well, I think to bring us back, I think one of the things that Bob was talking about was when everybody's dependent on everybody else, and we understand that all of these things connect to one another and affect one another, and what hurts us all.
Right.
You know,
And it's hard for a lot of people to extend it beyond fellow humans.
Yeah.
They don't see it in the environment. They don't see it in the tree. They don't see it in an animal. Which I find, I relate to animals better than humans, I'll be honest about. But for a lot of people, they're not. They're just objects to exploit it, and the earth is something else to exploit it.
I'm curious, what was the faith path of your siblings?
My sister became Catholic. She married in college. She married somebody who was Catholic, and she went that direction. He didn't ask her to, but she's like a Christmas Catholic. You know what I mean?
Christmas.
My older sister, who since passed away, I never saw any sort of religious aspects to her. She was 6 years older than me. That was like a whole generation. But my younger sister was just a little 2 years younger than me. And so we kind of grew up together. She was out of the house before I was mature.
I'm curious, you had that experience with Night and Fog when you were young. And then I'm assuming you watched it again
Oh, I've seen it several times. I've taught it, yeah.
when you were an adult. Did you see
Yeah,
it again
yeah,
for the
yeah,
first time?
Yeah.
And did you have recollection?
It brought back a lot of childhood feelings, yeah. I mean, that was, for me, I had a bad night the rest of that night. I never talked to my parents about it, but I was deeply disturbed. And I mean it when I say it left an impression that I wanted to understand what happened, how somebody could do that. I mean, the Germans were civilized people. You know, it used to be that early after the war, well, that's German nature. Well, that's bullshit. It's not German nature, it's human nature. You know, we all are capable of committing those, we see it going on right now in our country.
That's right.
You know, we create the other who's less than us, which allows us to do whatever we want. You know, so I can't claim that I fully understand it, but I have a kind of a deeper feeling about it. But yeah, that film was like, ooh.
Yeah, I was gonna say to everyone, because I was one of the only people who has seen it,
Yeah.
it's very hard.
Yeah.
Just be aware it's very difficult.
Yeah, it's in French, but it's like a half hour long, maybe.
Maybe 45 minutes.
Yeah, it's
I
one of
don't
the
know.
first ones done, and they're scenes from, you know, that were taken back then, when they were liberating the camps.
Aren't you sort of shocked that it's broadcast on network TV?
Well, it wasn't network, we had educational TV, in mine, we were big enough, they had ABC, NBC, and CBS, right? That's what most people had, but they had educational TV, I think that's what it was on. I didn't know the name of the film, when I saw it later, I thought, that's the film, that's the film I saw as a kid.
But I think that notion that all of us have it in us, or it reminds me of the Stanford experiment, the Stanford
Yeah,
prison
yeah.
experiment. So it's helpful to remember, we have a tendency, and even as you use, to put that kind of behavior and those kind of people
Others.
as others, we
Others, yeah.
tend to other them and forget that, you know, the Hitler youth were just doing a thing. They didn't,
Yeah.
anyway, you get it.
To change the subject, what about the boy with green hair?
I've only seen that once, I actually saw it on your recommendation, yeah, why don't you talk about it, you know more about it than I do.
Well, I've seen it several times. It's from 1947 or 48. And it's about a boy, just an ordinary boy. He's an orphan and lives with his non-related uncle. And this one morning, he wakes up with green hair. And so he goes to school, and everybody's going, like, God, look at that guy with green hair. I wouldn't want my sister to marry him, and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And then they started chasing after him, and he dyes his hair, and then he has a revelation, and he says, you know what, I'm just gonna let my hair grow green, because that's who I am. And I just love that. And it had this great song with it too. Nature Boy by Nat King Cole, I think.
Yeah, it's sort of like the metamorphosis of cocktails, you know, the guy that wakes up as a cockroach.
Oh, I've seen that. I mean, I've read it. I haven't seen it.
Are there any questions on Zoom? We need to wrap up. Any last comments or questions that anybody has?
Good job.
Yeah, great.
Thank you.